Step into the realm of limitless imagination with Beyond the Art, where Indigenous creativity knows no bounds. Join us on a captivating journey through Indigenous art and innovation.
Together, let's delve into the depths of imagination, pushing boundaries with guests from diverse sectors of the Native American art world, each sharing their unique creative vision and inspiring journeys.
Join us for exclusive interviews, thought-provoking discussions, and uplifting stories.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Art. Today, we are honored to have with us an extraordinary artist, filmmaker, and storyteller, Jonathan Thunder. Known for his surreal paintings, animated films, and installations, Jonathan brings a unique blend of personal experience and social commentary to his work. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Jonathan. We're thrilled to have you here. You worked in so many different mediums, painting, digital animation, installations. It's really impressive. Let's start with your background. You're from the Red Lake band of, I'm going to mess this up, Ojibwe? Ojibwe. I knew that word, and grew up in Twin Cities. How do these two worlds influence your work, and how do the integration into your art?
I would say for me, it's kind of like what do they call it? Like reverse engineered as far as like my heritage goes. I grew up in the Twin Cities. We were pretty urban. We just kind of were living our day-to-day life. I was a kid with a skateboard. I was lucky enough to have a BMX bike. But I knew that we were Red Lakers early on. I knew that we came from, Indigenous heritage because I had questions. My dad would give me books like, he gave me the biography of Crazy Horse when I was real small, and I started, dipping into that in elementary school, and Basil Johnston, and learning about mythology and like storytelling and stuff. And it was usually when I started to get in trouble, he'd be like, "Here, why don't you stay home tonight and read this?" But we visited Red Lake multiple times a year to visit family, go to the celebrations and things like that. Which in hindsight is kind of a very surface level, sort of cultural participation, I would say. It wasn't until I got into my, studying for my art that I really started to dig into like the history, of the Ojibwe, and really trying to wrap my brain around, what the visuals would be that sort of represent the spirit of Ojibwe storytelling. Mm-hmm. And through, learning how to draw and be a professional artist, got involved in language revitalization projects. And I still pretty much just know the dirty words. But, I've been involved with a lot of projects that teach Ojibwe language and, things like that. I'm more on the, visual end of those projects. So as an artist, somehow I was able to become an active member of, the Anishinaabe tribe, mm-hmm. and play a productive role.
So your paintings often explore identity, social political commentary, and personal experiences. How do you approach these complex subjects in your work? And do you have a specific process when you start a new piece?
That's a good question. I generally work intuitively. I always want my paintings to feel like they're coming naturally. But I also don't dial it back when I feel that there's like a commentary, something to be said with a painting where the sociopolitical commentary tends to surface, right? And you can tell, I guess, by my work that it's not like an illustration, which is very literal. My representations of current events are more like a dialogue or just my perspective, I guess, in the form of an adapted story, how much like a filmmaker might adapt a biblical story or something like that to be more modern, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Well, your work has a strong storytelling element with vignettes that leave interpretation open to the viewer. How do you balance the deliberate aspects with experimentation when you create a piece?
Uh, I think, if it feels too literal, I kind of like pull back on it a little. Like if it starts to borderline, maybe propaganda, I'll dial it back. But I do want to tell the story, so there are things that like need to be included. And I guess as I'm working, I'm just trying to keep it, like I said, a natural flow in the work. But this is, I guess, more representative of my paintings and some of my animation projection projects. And I do take illustration work, which is where I guess I am able to make the contrast, between like illustration work versus painting. And that illustration work for me is, like you kind of have to show what you're trying to say, right?
Right.
So maybe that's what gives me the compass when I'm painting, to say, all right, this is turning more into an illustration than a painting. So then I'll kind of walk it back a little bit so it feels more natural.
Well, we love the influence you've drawn from pulp culture, everything from Mad Magazine and Garbage Pail Kids to Twilight Zone and Public Enemy. Oh, geez, I can't talk today. How do you decide which cultural references to incorporate into your work?
It just kind of, I don't know, man. It's just like,
just comes to you.
Whatever feels right,
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, I feel like it's what will strengthen, the mood.
Well, do you have
that I'm going for.
Yeah. Do you have a preset idea when you start creating and start working on a piece, or is it something that you go to work and it just comes to you? Is it instantaneous and organic, or is it something thought out and planned?
Some of the paintings are automatic, but when it's a larger canvas, like this one behind me is 15 by 7 feet, I'll definitely do a rough sketch. And what I'll actually probably do after that is put that into Procreate, and just define the areas and the composition a little more. And I've gotten into working with projectors where I will turn the lights out in the studio and project that onto the canvas. And that way I can figure out like how large or small, it needs to be. Because, at that scale, sometimes you want it to be really impressive, or maybe you sort of messed up your composition in the sketch a little bit. And
right.
You need to move things around. But that's really a nice phase for me to kind of figure out, like, I guess, placement. But I would say from the drawing stage to the painting stage, every step, there's some just kind of intuitive work at play there. I don't take the time to, I think, worry about if my renders are, fully, I guess, realistic or something like that. I think when they've hit the tone that I'm going for, then I usually say it's doing its job. If that makes sense, I guess that's the best way that I can try to describe it.
Well, you're creative, so you have your own set path. How you start your work.
Sometimes I think I have my own dictionary too, so I said check with you there.
Obviously, when I don't have a dictionary because I'm fumbling every word today. So,
Jonathan, you've mentioned that you are heavily influenced by animation films. How has your love of animation shaped your painting aesthetic and the way you tell stories through your art?
I think it's exciting, to incorporate what I would call, animation characters or, like cartoon-esque subjects into a painting alongside what I would say are more realistically rendered. And I think that kind of, that sort of comes from, I remember Cool World and Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
Like coming into the theaters right around the time that I was really trying to figure out like what I wanted my aesthetic to be. And I was reading a magazine, a couple of them actually, where they sort of were featuring these lowbrow pop surrealists who were, like using Popeye and Marvin the Martian in their paintings, that were rendered somewhat surrealistic or realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, God, that is so fucking cool, man. I just want to, I want to try that. So I actually went to school for animation a little bit too and studied the culture and background of a lot of cartoons that we probably all knew and grew up with, and found out that cartoons, at one point were problematic, which I guess I hadn't thought about in my adult life, but it gave me a good reason to use characters to tell the story that I wanted to tell in my paintings, and take characters from well-known cartoons and put them, in compromised positions where it was almost like I was getting a little bit of revenge on them or something for, the stuff they were doing in the cartoons when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. But, like the painting I'm working on today is it's an Ojibwe legend about Lake Superior, which I live really close to, that I heard after moving to Duluth here, but I'm rendering it in a way where it looks more like a 50s style cartoon onto a skateboard. And, I just thought it would be so fun, like if in my little world that I like to invent. Some people might think I live entirely in my own little world, but, like how cool would it be to go back, to those days, when these all white cartoons were focused at an all white audience where they were making fun of Indians and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But to see, like the Great Lynx or the underwater panther, as a cartoon character sort of, being represented properly or I don't know, hilariously, or improperly, but represented at all. So I think that's just fun for me. And I always try to keep what I'm working on kind of exciting, or thrilling, or try to make sure that I scare myself a little bit. Because if I feel like if my heart rate doesn't go up a little bit by the time an image is done, then it's a yawner. So I'm just kind of, just trying to keep it interesting.
Let's talk about your painting, The Lighthouse, which reimagines Washington crossing the Delaware. How did that piece come about, and what inspired you to use characters that reflect your own personal observations from 2020?
Yeah, The Lighthouse. That was a fun piece that sparked a series of black and white paintings. And it that decision sort of went back to my love for like indie film that even today can be shot in black and white. Like the Willem Dafoe remake of the movie The Lighthouse, which kind of captures the essence of, that sort of downward spiral into chaos that, human experience can have at times. And also, I just thought it was a great story. But also at the time, I think it was during the pandemic, post-elections or something to that effect. And I was living in a rented house on the shore of Lake Superior. So I was looking at Lake Superior every day. Like our backyard was just feet from the shore, which was an interesting experience for me. And I started to see this painting of some people in a boat who couldn't make up their mind on which way to go. And we all know, what the climate was in 2020 politically and, civically. It's pretty sketchy. So I based the composition on Washington Crosses the Delaware because I just thought it would be fun, to have a little fun with old George Washington there, and just talk about it from my perspective, because like I said, when I was little, my dad would give me these books where he would tell me the truth about the relationship between the United States and indigenous tribes. So I've always felt like there was a story there that wasn't being told. And it also gave me an opportunity to paint some fun characters like Marvin the Martian, and have him sort of be this kind of like invader, shooting at a man who is trying to practice an Ojibwe treaty rite called spearfishing. That is still, they called it the Walleye Wars in Wisconsin, and it got serious, and to this day there's still, there's still some heated debate in the community there in Wisconsin that can lead to occasional gunfire over spearfishing. So I thought, man, in this day and age, in 2020, that shows you how old the painting was. I was like, people are still arguing about these minor, things that are based on this huge lie, that will never be revealed. And people are trying to find the best way forward. And in any form of recovery, they say that first, to find out what's wrong, you have to find the truth, right? You have to find out like where you've been to get to where you're going. So I think unless we can come to terms with the truths on, the foundation of this corporation that we all, live under its flag, then once we find that, we'll probably find some answers on the best way to move forward. And that was what the painting was about. It's kind of a mashup of things, and not all of it was deliberate, but ultimately I think that's what I was thinking about. I'm sure a lot of us were thinking about it, at that time. And, that's how the painting, I guess, came to be.
Well, thankfully the tense political days of 2020 are long behind us now. We're all sailing clear now.
Yeah, things are so much easier now.
Oh, that was rough.
That was close. Another powerful piece, Quarantine at Grandma's House. It captures the family during the early pandemic. And do you feel that you have a responsibility to document these societal moments through your art? And how do you stay connected to what's happening around you?
I do feel some kind of internal pull, and maybe it's, the Mad Magazine kind of like influence, that sort of sparked my first interest in making artwork. I do feel a pull to represent important events in my work, and kind of say what it was like, while I was here at this time, and maybe say, what are some things that happened that changed the direction of history. But I usually get those from, well, I guess, like everybody, I try to watch the news a little bit, listen to public radio. I keep my eye on the news feed, as much as it can be contaminated with, cute pictures of cats and stuff like that. But, just to see, what the pulse is, like the pulse of the community. Oftentimes it's what's important to my community, like that I'm kind of hearing from my friends and family, that will sort of influence one of these canvases for me. And obviously, at that time, Quarantine at Grandma's House was painted when I had relocated to Tulsa, Oklahoma on a self-paid residency. And a friend of mine said, hey, if you want to get out of, Minnesota for the winter, you should go check out Tulsa because they have a great art fair. There's a lot of tribes down there, I think you'd really dig it. So on a whim, we threw everything we owned in a U-Haul and broke our lease and just went cruising down there and moved into the most Minnesotan neighborhood I could find, next to the Arkansas River.
Yes.
That kind of goes through Tulsa. Uh-huh. But quickly things changed, the pandemic started to creep in. And I remember sitting at a sushi joint in downtown Tulsa, and the waitress had the news on it. Said there was a case of COVID-19 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think she said something like, "Oh, cancel the Sapporo," or something like that. And I was just like, "Oh man, what does this mean?" And so we tried to follow it. And I remember the Surgeon General at the time, I don't think he stayed the Surgeon General, but he said, well, we don't have a lot of information at this time, but we can tell you that the people who are at the most risk are the elderly and Native Americans. And I just looked at my wife like, why the hell did he just say Native Americans? What makes us so special, man? Come on. So, at that point, a lot of my new friends, from the area who were, from local tribes decided to stay home, until the smoke cleared. And I had a lot of time to sit and paint, and that was the first painting, I think, that came out of that event.
Well, Jonathan, thank you for the shout of Tulsa. That's where I'm located.
Yeah, cool, man.
Well, you've mentioned that environmental issues are important to you, and you address that in your painting Summer at Uncle Harvey's Mausoleum. How does the topic of climate change and environmental stewardship fit into your identity, both as an artist and as an Indigenous person?
Well, I don't, I'm not always the first person to run out, in soapbox or panic and run wild in the street with a sign or anything like that. But climate change has been, pretty evident. And even, it's just, I feel like it's undeniable at this point, and I think I started painting Uncle Harvey's Mausoleum around the time that all the way up here in Tulsa, or not Tulsa, you're in Tulsa, Duluth, that it was so dry that there were forest fires that were causing, smoky day after smoky day. There were air quality alerts to stay inside, and this is in a town where normally we're out on the trails or riding bike, or something like that. So it was hard to deny, I was like, man, something is happening, and 10 years ago when I moved to Duluth, we ran our air conditioner, you just had to have a little window air conditioner. You run it maybe 8 days of the summer and we'll drop that sucker back in the basement, but it's 80 today, and it's late September. So things are changing here, and it's undeniable. It's not my place to say, exactly what it is or where it's going to go. But as an artist, I paint my landscape, and if that landscape has some things happening in it, they might go in there, could be smoke or McDonald's or I don't know, chicken nuggets or something. But yeah, I think it's that simple, and as an Anishinaabe person, obviously, there's a sort of steward of the land kind of, I guess, instinct, to try to figure out,
right,
what's going to be good for my kiddo, or his kiddo, or, so on and so on.
Your use of hybrid human-animal figures and masks to explore your identity dynamics is fascinating. What do these symbolic elements represent to you, and how do they help you express complex themes in your work?
The masks. Well, I mean, I guess at a real basic level, I just think masks are cool because, they're a way for us to sort of put something on our face that shows how we feel, or, like you can put on a scary mask or like a funny mask or a comforting mask. And identity has been a part of my work since, my very first exhibit. And evolving identity, changing identity, who we are, who we'd like to be, or who, society says we are. Those themes, I think, are where the masks come from. So it's fun for me to play around with those, and it's fun for me to use them to set the tone of a character without actually painting a portrait of a person, their face, so that it becomes someone, they become a concept, they become representational of whatever story it is that I'm trying to tell in the little theatrical play that is my canvas. And, it's, I think it's a real good tool, for me to just try to say what it is I'm trying to say about that character and that scene.
Well, thus far on your journey, you've had a remarkable career from solo exhibition to winning awards for your films. Looking back and self-reflecting, what has been one of the most rewarding experiences or milestones for you as an artist?
So when I set out to be an artist, it was, it had a lot to do with myself, like wanted to express myself and keep myself healthy, through expression. And I never thought, that it would lead to anything other than that. I went to school for film because I knew that I could get a job doing something that would pay the bills that was also creative, and then I could use that money to go and paint, right? To enter in shows, group shows and stuff like that. One thing I never asked for, was to be of service to things like language revitalization, Indigenous food systems, and just creating, tools, I guess, for our folks, to say that we have good quality books, we have good quality animations, stuff that I've worked on, and we have representation, at a level that is considered professional. That type of service work for me, I would say, has given me purpose outside of just that sort of image of an artist who just is brooding around in his studio making whatever the hell they want. So I guess if I had to give an honest answer, I would put that up there, towards the top.
You've won multiple awards for your work, including the Paula Krasner Foundation Award for risk-taking in painting. What does receiving that kind of recognition mean to you? And how do you continue to push the boundaries in your art?
It's a funny and very real story. That Paula Krasner Foundation grant came at a time when I had just moved to Tulsa. We were hanging out, and I lugged these big paintings across the country, and I was kind of looking at them and thinking about, why do I just lug these canvases around with me? Because I'm not very stationary. I kind of move around a little bit. I was like, man, am I doing it wrong? Like, should I quit painting? Should I just work on something that's a little more, maybe I should go start a bowling alley or something. But it's all at that point, I think, I had been painting for nearly 20 years. So it's who I am. And that was a very I will say, confusing moment for me, to actually sit and take inventory on my career and life choices. And I did ask 3 people, you have to get the Paula Krasner Foundation grant. You have to ask 3 people that you think will write in a letter of recommendation. So I asked Ken Bloom, who was the museum director at the Tweed Museum of Art, and Christina Woods, who is the executive director at the Duluth Art Institute, and Hyde Erdrich, who is a poet out of Minneapolis. And they all said yes. They all wrote a letter. I had to wait for a little while. But, that letter and that check for $20,000 came right at that time, and the letter said, we basically just want you to keep painting. That's it. There's no strings attached. We think you do great work, so keep it up. And that was the nudge, that's all I needed. And I was like, well, okay, that's a sign, I would say. So, and that was actually, like when things started shutting down, like I remember the COVID restrictions. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember this, like galleries were pulling out, like museum events were shutting down, workshops were like, no, we can't do it. So at first I thought nothing of it. But as email after email came in canceling events, I was just like, well, this is actually affecting me pretty bad here.
Right.
This is getting kind of scary. So that grant, at a time when everybody was just frozen, it allowed me the ability to sit and find my direction, like where did I want to go next as an artist and what did I want to do?
Yeah, that's the timing is pretty incredible. That list of support is pretty incredible too. Those are some amazing folks that supported you on that. So congratulations. That's really impressive.
Thanks. I owe them. I actually made them each a painting, of like a little buffalo that was paratrooping, because they're like my little paratroopers. They showed up right when I needed them, and I didn't even know it.
Oh, that's great. As an Anishinaabe artist, what do you think is about the role of Native artists today in the art world, and how do you feel that representation for Indigenous voices, or do you feel that the voices are improving, or is there still a lot of work that needs to be done?
I think the role of Native artists is to, it's for them to look after themselves and their voice and tell the story, tell their truth, right? Because that's the most important thing. They need to be able to tell the truth, because that's going to be healthy and good for them, and B, they'll be a representative of where they come from, no matter what their subject matter. That they come from a community. So I think it's important for us to support each other, and like if there's a platform event coming up, to like try to see who that's on the level that you can say, like, hey, you want to come to this thing with me, or like you should apply for this thing. I think it'd be great for you. And just bring up that that level of representation. I think the more of us, the better. It's just going to lead to more stories, more representation. Like more good. And lots and lots of art, like seriously, like that's the most important thing. Lots of Native art, out there in the world of all shapes and colors, sizes, levels of weirdness, as far as I'm concerned. But we'll see it all, and that will truly, like create an amazing spectrum, for what we have to offer.
Your work's been shown nationally and internationally, and in different cultural contexts. How have people interpreted your work based on where it's been shown?
I try to be careful about where I show my work. I've shown it at places where people, they show up looking for art. They know that they're going to see some artwork, and that's where they, like they're prepared when they come across my work. But I also know, from recent experiences that if you go to an event where people are not prepared to see the kind of work that I do, it's going to be like, playing an indie film, to a bunch of like 3-year-olds who just wanted to watch Boss Baby. It's just not going to hit right. You know what I'm saying? So
missed opportunity.
Yeah, the audience, I think an artist should understand where their audience is. Like people who gravitate towards comic style art should probably go to Comic-Con or, something like that. Mm-hmm. People who do abstract work, will do well in maybe museums and galleries, and everything in between.
We've talked about storytelling and how storytelling is incorporated in various art forms. With your work spanning from fine art to animation, how do you see the connection between art and storytelling? And do you feel like everything you create, whether it's a painting or an animation, it's about telling a story?
I think so. And even when I don't mean to, there's something there. I feel like story was the thing that kept me the most interested in art history. I remember my art history teacher, Doug Garter, would, turn out the lights and be nice and air conditioned in that room. And he'd start a slideshow, because that's how old I am. He had slides, and, the art was cool, right? Like it's cool to see a cool painting or something like that. But when he would start to talk about the artist and the artist's life and who that artist represented, or like what year he lived in, like, oh, this artist got into a sword fight with one of the king's guards and spent the rest of his life in prison because he chopped his head off or something, like I was like, wow, that painting just got way cooler, so there's always a cool story. There's always a story. Like even an artist like, to bring back Jackson Pollock, who, he was sort of more like I don't know. I think once he said, you don't pull your hair out looking at a bed of flowers, wondering what it means. That was the kind of his idea of like how serious you should try to like read into, what a piece of art means. But he had a story, there's a story there to be told about him. Right. It was pretty tragic, but, nonetheless, a story that Ed Harris decided to make a movie about. So, I think for me, even if I'm just painting a melting ice cream cone, there's a story there, big and small.
True.
Looking at your journey so far, what's been one of the biggest challenges you've faced as an artist, especially like when it comes to getting your work out in the world, and how did you overcome that?
Let's see. Well, I guess you have to be persistent, right? There are some amazing, like supernaturally gifted artists that are not great at getting their art out in the world because they're shy, or they have a self-image issue, but, I guess I had the luck of being a little outgoing, so I just like to put my stuff out there, and occasionally someone will see it that it's, a fit for. Sometimes that person, is putting on a show. I apply to stuff. The biggest challenge I think I faced as an artist is knowing how to sustain myself. Between the commissions and the drive to be in the painting studio making work that they, I heard somebody recently say it's on spec, like I hadn't really heard that term used in the art world before. I always thought, you just make a bunch of work and you have a show and, whatever sells, that kind of thing. or occasionally somebody will email you and say, we'd like to get that piece, so yeah, it's like, when to know, when to say yes to how many commissions versus when to say, okay, that's enough. I still have to like prepare for, my next show or something like that. Because a lot of times, if a place does have like a grant or a stipend or something for you to do a show with them, it's not enough to like pay your bills until the show, opens up or something like that. It's usually like pocket money. It's, get a couple nice coffees and paint.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say that's my biggest challenge.
And the art world is ever changing and shifting. And as others start becoming more apparent and involved in the art world, we're seeing a rise in the digital art and NFTs in the art world today. As someone who works in both traditional and digital mediums, what's your take on this shift? And do you see exciting possibilities or potential challenges for especially Indigenous Native Americans?
I would say my opinion, and this is just my opinion, is that us natives are in no more danger than anybody, especially with like this conversation around AI, because, we have just as much ability to like, to say, well, I guess I better teach myself this new thing that came out, so I'm not the last one that knows about it. If that means watching a YouTube video or just like opening the thing up and like doing some tutorials or whatever, you just have to do it because that's what other people are doing. But as far as digital work, I've always been excited about digital work. Even after my first year in painting school way back in '99, I remember seeing the movie Monsters Inc. by Pixar came out, and I was like, that's the future, that's the future of storytelling right there. Like, that's pretty incredible. And that's not to say that, that's going to be the only art form that is the future, but it's pretty exciting. For me, I like to be able to touch, and feel, the work that I'm working on. But I also like what digital tools have to offer because it's entertaining. It's cool to work with. I think the AI thing, that's happening now, that's I haven't seen really any, imagery that I feel has a spirit or, a soul or a story. That's not to say that, it won't, but a lot of people who are buying, say a painting or a mural or a sculpture or like, a handcrafted item, like they not only want to see, the mistakes, not mistakes, that's the bad word, but like the imperfections, in that item.
True.
Right. And the only reason why I know this is because having gone to painting school and taking sculpture and creative writing, still writing in there because ChatGPT is a pretty powerful tool now. But I remember, so I went to school for visual effects and motion graphics, and I learned how to make really precise imagery using 3D animation tools, Illustrator, Photoshop. And I quickly learned that just because you can make something look damn near perfect, using a computer, doesn't mean that that's what people want.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a reason why Shel Silverstein's drawings, are so popular. And there's a reason, why painters, deny that mistakes exist. Because it's about the human hand. And, that's what brings us together, in that form of art. So but there is a time and place, for all that other digital stuff. I do like seeing some of the weird AI animations or videos that are coming out. They're just it's like a train wreck, I can't look away. So yeah, it's interesting.
So, you're currently working on a couple of solo exhibitions that are coming out this year, featuring both paintings and digital canvases. Can you give us a sneak peek on what those themes or concepts, or what you're exploring with those?
Yeah. Well, so my, I guess, next solo exhibit will be in February at a gallery in Minneapolis called the Gamut Gallery. And I've kind of gravitated towards paintings that symbolize our joy, like the joy in my life. I think the political paintings kind of like sort of boomeranged me into that subject matter for this body of work. And there's going to be a lot of double entendre and like dirty jokes. And that's sort of fueled on the cultural element, that I grew up with. I remember, like aunties and uncles in my house, my family could turn anything into like a dirty, like innuendo if they wanted to, and it was funny, it wasn't like politically incorrect or anything like that. It was cultural, it was Indian humor, and it still is, and it took my wife to kind of like remind me of that, because she started writing this Native romance book, and we would sit and talk, like what the spirit of it could be, and she would run things by me that she wrote, and some of it would be, it would venture into that stuff, and we would like, tell stories about where we heard that stuff before. And I just thought, yeah, I think it's time for me, to kind of like do some work around that stuff. And it's been fun. There's a lot of like imagery in the paintings that are can be interpreted, in in many ways, and some of them will be funner than others, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But the second solo exhibit that I have next year, in April, which is only 2 months after the first one, is at a gallery at the University of Minnesota called the Quarter Gallery. I think it's in the same building as the Catherine E. Nash Gallery, which is a large space for group shows. Mm-hmm. Quarter Gallery is much smaller, probably more the right size for a solo exhibit. And that will be in collaboration with the Catherine E. Nash Gallery curator, Howard Oransky, who is a painter himself. And, it's just, he's been a painter a lot longer than I have. So he's just an amazing guy to sit down and talk with. But that theme will be more centered around my kind of umbrella, statements that I make about my life, or vignettes, I call them, or the kind of like socio-political commentary kind of stuff, more institutional kind of like value, I guess, there.
Well, Jonathan, for our aspiring artist listeners, what advice would you give to those that are trying to find their own voice in the arts sector and field and want to pursue this as a career, especially if they're interested in working across multiple mediums like you and being an Indigenous Native American?
Yeah, well, like I said, I got into the film and visual effects and animation stuff because I wanted to be able to support myself using a creative medium. And that has paid off so many times, like it's kind of the difference between an artist waiting by the mailbox, for a check from the gallery versus somebody who's just always making art. Like if I'm not painting, I have like 5 commissions to do digital drawings for animation or anything like that at any given moment. There's never enough time. But I guess what I would say, to young aspiring artists, is geek out. Like, if you want to be in the arts, be a total art geek. Like, just nerd out on it, enjoy it, love it, learn everything there is to know about it. Try different things as you're starting out, like learn the basics and figure out what gets your motor running, the most, and you'll find your path, you'll find your voice, you'll find the language that you speak the best, but like, I think some artists, they can, right out of school, they can support themselves just by doing their studio practice. That wasn't my experience, for a few reasons, but it definitely helped, to have a plan B kind of thing for, when you need it. And
Right.
for me, that was the films and animation, which I also enjoy. Like, I'm a total film nerd. One of my favorite jobs was working at a DVD rental place or a movie rental place, because we had VHS, and they had the adult section too. And my specialty, all of us workers had our specialties. Mine was the indie section and the horror section. So I am a total story nerd. I'm a mythology nerd. I just love like that kind of underproduced kind of like human hand, that some of those film genres come with. So yeah, just go all the way. That's all I can say. If you're going to try, go all the way.
Absolutely.
Right on. Jonathan, it's been such a pleasure having you with us today and hearing about your creative process and the stories that are behind your work. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, Jonathan, thank you. We can't wait to see what's next for you. And we know our listeners will feel the same. Absolutely. Be sure to check out Jonathan's upcoming
Appreciate
exhibits and follow his work online. And what's the best way that someone can follow you in the virtual world?
Instagram is a good place, and my website, johnthunder.com.
Perfect.
Thanks again to Jonathan Thunder for being on the show, and thank all of you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Beyond the Art. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Indigenous art and creativity. Stay inspired and keep exploring with us on Beyond the Art.
Remember to subscribe and follow us for more exclusive interviews, insightful discussions, and stories that ignite your artistic imagination.
Until next time, continue to unlock your limitless potential with Beyond the Art. Thank you for listening.